Darren again. I'm going to do another video. This one's going to be on the Leave It exercise. Again, this one works on a specific thing. We're working on discipline here. The first thing I like to do it in 2 stages. The first thing is going to be working on temptation. Temptation is going to be putting something in front of the dog that's on the ground. Now, this is where it changes. This is where it gets a little different here. So now we're going to put something in front of our dog, and we're going to say, you can go ahead and have it once we've released them. And remember, the release that we're going to be using is okay for everything. So okay starts the idea of permission, a permission-based lifestyle. Okay to eat your food, okay to go through the door, okay to jump in the car, okay to cross the street. So we're always using okay as a release going forward. So we're going to use okay in order to work on this temptation, the first part of Leave It. So the first part of Leave It is simply taking a treat and hopping it closer and closer and closer to my dog, and so that my dog understands that the idea of lunging and snagging something is gone. We cannot have that behavior any longer. So you can imagine where this can come into play, where there's medication, or we're cooking something in the kitchen and something falls on the ground that the dog absolutely cannot have. We cannot have that lunge effect. It's just natural instinct for them to kind of leap and lunge and grab something. So especially in Lizzie's case, when she was raised, she was born with other dogs. We didn't rescue her until she was about 8 months old. So she lived with other dogs, and it was much a fight or flight kind of mentality that they had, where if they were all putting their food down, it was whoever could eat their food the fastest. So it's just kind of ingrained in them to lunge and grab stuff as quick as they possibly can, because they don't know when the next time they're going to eat. So it's just ingrained in them. So we need to get this mentality out of their brain. And again, we need to get their mentality based on permission-based going forward. So I'm going to have her sit. Lizzie, sit. Good, sit. Always acknowledge the sit. No matter how long you've been working with your dog, always acknowledge the sit. Now I'm going to put a treat in front of her, and I'm going to tell her leave it. Now you can repeat this again and again if you like. As I put this down, I'm going to be watching her. I'm going to keep my leash up high, and I'm going to be watching her head. Her head is going to tell me if she's going to be ready to make a mistake or not. So as her head starts to drop quickly and lean forward, it usually tells me if their temptation level is too close or too far. So as I'm going to drop it down, I'm going to say leave it, and I'm going to disengage. As if to say, I dare you, but I keep the leash up high, ready. And again, she's looking at me, which is good. It's a good sign. She's looking for permission. I'm going to hop the treat in closer, again, disengaging myself. Leave it. I can remind her again, leave it. And again, I back up a little bit. Again, she's looking at me, but you can see the temptation's harder for her. She's glancing at me, but she's also having a really difficult time. I would ideally like to get the first part of this exercise to about her paws. I'm going to hop it in closer. Leave it. Leave it. Now, to me, this is where she's passed the test. And again, look at how hard it is. It's changed now because her head position is different. Her head position is more pointed down towards the tree because this is very difficult for her. Okay, so I'm going to allow her to have it. To me, this is where she's passed. She's proven this test to me. This might take you a day or two to get this point with your dog. Again, if she makes a mistake, I'm going to correct her with the leash real quick, as fast as I can. I usually tell people, your dog cannot get the treat on this one. But every time I say that, the dog ends up getting the treat. So do the best you can to not allow your dog to get this treat. You've got to be quick. You've got to anticipate that they're going to make a mistake, so you've got to be ready. I don't want to have the leash low while she's going to do this exercise, because if I do that, I got to bring it up way up high, and I'm not going to be ready in time. So now, she's passed the first test to me, and again, this might take you a couple days to do this. So I'm going to go on to the second stage with this. Okay, I'm going to start it off. Lizzie, sit. Good, sit. Always acknowledge the sit. She made a little mistake. She came to a hiccup, came out of that sit. Got to always tell them when they make a mistake. Start the exercise off again. Same thing. Now, when I go back to the second part, I go off my shoulders. Dog is on my left. I'm in the middle. And then treat is going to be on my right. This is my starting point, always. So from here, I'm going to say leave it. Leave it. Leave it. Now, what I like to do is I like to disengage a little bit. Backing away. almost to the point where if I can drop the leash, my dog proves to me that she can do this exercise. I'm going to come back in, pick up the reward, and give her a separate reward. Good girl, good, leave it. But she's not going to get the treat that I had on the ground. You have to do something different. Now, if I were doing an exercise with a dog that, let's just say, tissues were a temptation, which I don't think tissues are really an issue for Lizzie. She's past that stage. I would do something like this. I would go, Lizzie, sit. Good, sit. I would take a tissue, because my dog loves tissues, but let's just say she did. And I would place it on the ground, and I would say, leave it. Lizzie doesn't really care about tissues, but that's how I would do this with a dog that likes tissues. And once they prove that they can take a tissue and I could maybe drag it in front of them and then say, leave it again, and they don't touch it, I would then give them a reward and I would pick up the tissue. Now I want to add this, make this a little harder. I would take the tissue and I would drop it from hip high and say, leave it. Remember, you have to say leave it before you go do this. Again, give them a separate reward, pick up the tissue. Then you could do something like take the tissue, put it on a mantle, say leave it, and flick it off the counter and see what they do. By challenging them using motion in different locations, you're actually testing your dog in real-time scenarios. So we can imagine that we're in the kitchen and we're cooking something, and you go, I'm going to see what my dog can do because she's passed all these tests and she's done so well to this point. Let me try her with something non-lethal that they could possibly have that won't hurt them or they won't choke on. And you try it in the kitchen. And as you're chopping something up, you could say leave it and flick it on the ground and see what they do. Of course, being ready and anticipating that they're going to make a mistake. So as if I didn't have leash connected to Lizzie and she's passed this test and she's gotten to this progression where I can do this in real time, I would be in the kitchen as I would be ready to flick something on the ground. I'd be anticipating she's going to make a mistake. So as I said, leave it, I would flick this on the ground and I would be ready to turn to her and be abrupt if she started to make a mistake. Now, I wouldn't want to flick it right in front of her, but I would do it in vicinity. Where we would challenge her and test her. So work on leave it. Remember, there's two parts. The first part is temptation. We're hopping something in closer. And then the second part is we're swapping the item out and we're picking it up and we're giving her a separate reward. Once you go on to the second part, which we're swapping the item out and giving her a separate reward, we do not go back to the first part. So you're no longer going back to allowing her to have whatever's on the ground. You passed that test. Now you're on to the second part. And the second part can be used in all kinds of incidences, whereas you're walking down the road and there's a dead carcass on the ground. Leave it, don't touch it. You're in the midst of, in the kitchen and you're chopping something up, again, leave it, don't touch it. Medication falls on the ground. Leave it, don't touch it. But you can't use this command until you're ready to actually apply it. So your dog basically has to go through all these tests first, and then you can apply the leave it command, but not until then. So it's like anything else. Your dog doesn't understand what the command is until you've actually worked on it first, okay? So give this a shot, and I'll have some more videos for you guys soon to come. Thanks.